Storytelling ignites new ideas about the multifaceted nature of human behavior. Now, this statement can be interpreted in various ways. Storytelling, as we know, is the main medium of how stories transcend over time. It is a way of expressing a single moment, a series of events, or feelings that came alive worthy of impacting others. Hello, my name is Siham Maamary, and today I'll be presenting to you a mini lecture on this statement in relation to The Crucible, a play written by Arthur Miller in 1953, and my related text, Fahrenheit 451, a film directed by Rahman Bahraini in 2018. In this mini lecture, I will be speaking about the overall context of the play, what circumstances motivated Arthur Miller to write this play, introduce my related text, introduce the three characters, the analysis, Abigail Williams, John Proctor, and Guy Montag from my related text, the analysis of Abigail Williams, the analysis of John Proctor, the analysis of Guy Montag, and outline the key similarities and differences between the play and the film. The context of the play. The contemporary tragedy The Crucible is an allegory to the 1692 Salem witch trials. It depicts the authentic consequences of false accusations based on blind religious faith, as Miller displays the dangers of unjustified rumors. However, this play was written by Arthur Miller during another type of witch hunt, McCarthyism in 1950s America. Under McCarthyism in 1950s America came the Cold War, the Red Scare, the House Un-American Activities Committee, and McCarthyism. Miller uses The Crucible as an allegory where he identified the key similarities between the hysteria and fear of the Salem witch trials and the Red Scare of impending communism in the 1950s. It can be seen as a warning to the audience against the dangers and consequences of false accusations and how they can deeply impact people's lives. Now, what does the crucible really mean? The crucible solely refers to a metal container in which metals or other substances may be melted or subjected to very high temperatures. But this is explicitly shown through the characters Abigail and Proctor, as we travel through and see their human experiences and emotions and inconsistencies and how they choose to present themselves through their transgressions and redemptions, through the power and justice of the core system and the overall witch hunt of the play, and the time at which it was written. Introduce my related text. My related text is Fahrenheit 451, a film adaptation by Rahman Bahraini. This film represents all the four cornerstones of the module: transgression, redemption, witch hunt, and power and justice. And this is seen through the protagonist, Guy Montag. The analysis of the three characters. The three characters that will be thoroughly analysed through their human qualities and emotions, which form individual and collective experiences through their multifaceted natures, are Abigail Williams, John Proctor, and Guy Montag. The way these characters tell their stories through their human experiences makes their responder really reflect on their everyday life and who we choose to surround ourselves with. The analysis of Abigail Williams. Abigail Williams is the primary protagonist of The Crucible. She is considered the catalyst that sets all the tragic events and emotions, all because of her love and desire for John Proctor, her former boss, when she used to work as a maid for him and his wife, Elizabeth Proctor, and got fired from the job in their home. After Elizabeth discovered the adulterous affair between Abigail and Proctor, Abigail's desire for John Proctor caused her to do the witchcraft on Elizabeth, which ultimately results in the beginning of the Salem witch trials, as well as the widespread hysteria in Salem, and later uses the opportunity to get Elizabeth killed. But as we know, Elizabeth was pregnant, so they delayed her hanging, and instead John Proctor had been hung to essentially preserve his name. Abigail is intelligent, inconsiderate, selfish, and manipulative, given she single-handedly started the Salem witch trials and witch hunts. Abigail's story is false, but that is her story and how she chooses to present herself. She doesn't change throughout the entire play. Now, right at the beginning of the play, in Act 1, Betty is unconscious laying on the bed in Paris's home. Her father, a reverend, who found Abigail, Betty, and Tituba dancing in the woods, and later we find out that they were doing witchcraft on Elizabeth Proctor, and that Betty had been negatively affected by it. Witchcraft being the worst crime a person could commit in Salem, Reverend Paris was scared about his reputation. He interrogates Abigail, asking her if there really was witchcraft involved. She denies, replying, "Your name in the town," he says, "Your name in the town, it is entirely white, is it not?" In which Abigail replies, with an edge of resentment, "Why, I am sure it is, sir. There be no blush about my name." Paris knows that there has been rumors circling the town about her and why she left the Proctor's home. The concepts of manipulation and deception come in. The pronouns my shows her selfish nature and how it impacts her. It shows her manipulative traits as the stage directions with an edge of resentment, outlines that she's bitter and irritated. It also foreshadows her name is connected to darker things like the affair with John Proctor and the witchcrafts committed in Salem. This also shows her individual experiences with what motivated her to do the witchcraft on Elizabeth, the jealousy within her and her inconsiderate nature. In this particular moment, later on in Act 1, when the Putnams arrive to Paris's home to see Betty, blaming it all on the devil, Abigail quickly realizes that it is getting out of hand and Abigail quickly realizes that it's getting serious, and when the Putnams and Paris leave the room, Abigail turns at once, goes to Betty, and now with fear in her voice, Betty doesn't move. She shakes her. Now stop this, Betty. Sit up now. In this instance, the audience can see her panic through the stage directions, fear in her voice, and she shakes her. In this moment, she shows a glimpse of her redemption, showing her true self, and knows she did something wrong, and is aware of what she done. The use of exclamation points really shows the heightened emotions of Abigail, showing her nervousness as she grows hysterical. This can exhibit individual experiences in Abigail as she identified that she did wrong, but it's just the way she will overcome it and deal with it, the consequences of her actions. However, it depicts the global collective human experiences that humanity should not play with witchcraft because nobody can control it and it can lead to global hysteria. So people in our backyards do it. Just not long ago, in 2019, on Sydney Morning Herald, people were identified doing witchcraft to get into certain jobs or professions. Abigail tells her multifaceted story that ignites new ideas about human behavior is shown through how the audience sees her interact with the people in the play. Her deceitful nature allows her to treat different people different ways to get her own way. This can be enhanced through the minor characters that create textual integrity. These characters include John Proctor, Tituba, Judge Danforth, and Mary Warren. John Proctor. When she interacts with John in Act 1, they're alone in a room. When Betty is lying on the bed unconscious, Abigail speaks about their relationship and how she still lusts for him. Proctor, in return, does not give in. She says, "You are no wintry man. I know you, John, I know you." She is weeping. It shows betrayal on Abigail's perspective as she does love Proctor, and the anomaly that they did have an adulterous affair. The repetition shows the enhanced meaning where Abigail is trying to get her point across, but at the same time, Miller is trying to show the audience the effect of a forbidden relationship and that this relationship was not going anywhere in the first place. Later on into the conversation, a psalm is heard being sung below. This ultimately shows the paradox and the irony that Proctor and Abigail are talking about their forbidden relationship and affair, but religious songs are played in the background in Salem. Tituba. Tituba is an African-American slave to Reverend Paris and a former slave to Proctor. When they're all trying to find out the truth about what actually happened in the woods, Abigail straight away uses Tituba as a scapegoat for her own actions. Abigail says, "She made me do it. She made Betty do it," in which Tituba replies, shocked and angry, "Abby." This shows power and justice as it depicts Tituba's low status and power because her ancestors used to do witchcraft and is a black woman. When Abigail is asked if she sold herself to Lucifer, the devil, she straight away blames Tituba, who seems like an easy target for Abigail. The motif and symbolism of the devil runs right throughout the play. It ultimately represents the desires that are hidden and squashed by the Puritan theology, which govern the entirety of the town of Salem, and the power and justice is shown through Tituba, how she isn't able to express herself or give her reasoning, which is ironic because these so-called reverends don't even give her a chance to speak. They just blame her straight away. This is also showing the collective experiences, as there can be numerous Abigails in the world, but we as humanity have to choose who we surround ourselves with. Are they good people? Judge Danforth. When Proctor tells Danforth Abigail's true intentions, and who she truly is, Danforth doesn't listen. He says, pointing at Abigail incredulously, "This child would murder your wife?" Through Miller's form of stage directions, he is in a manner of disbelief and calls Abigail a child, indicating that she must be innocent. As we know, it isn't who she truly is. The irony is that the evidence is right there, but is brushed aside, which ultimately brings the concept of power and justice, that the court system is oblivious to the evidence and believes the lies from Abigail. And the concept of deception comes in, because Abigail has the overall ability and intelligence to trick the court system and with her deceit. Mary Warren. When in the courtroom, Proctor had confessed to the adulterous affair he had with Abigail, but to get the attention off of Abigail, Abigail brings about a yellow bird. "Why," she gulps, "why do you come, yellow bird?" And Abigail makes it seem like the yellow bird has been conjured by witchcraft by Mary Warren. But we know Abigail's story is false, but she gets her way. Miller creates the tone and overall concept of hysteria through both the chaotic stage direction and the intense dialogue. The yellow bird is a symbol, but can be interpreted in various means. On one side, yellow can represent happiness, harmony, and hope, and on the other side, yellow can be connected with deceit, and in the context with the yellow bird, in this context, the yellow bird can ultimately symbolize Abigail's deceit and cowardness, where the yellow bird can be an accusation in court, and Abigail claims that Mary is conjuring up spirits. The heightened emotions created by the stage directions is demonstrating how easily humans can be manipulated into conforming to the hysteria of a crowd. Through Abigail's multifaceted nature, we are able to depict the paradoxes, inconsistencies, and anomalies through her attitudes, human qualities, and motivations, all through storytelling and forms of Arthur Miller. The analysis of John Proctor. John Proctor is known as an honest man and a husband devoted to his wife, except for a single transgressive mistake ruins his entire life and eventually is the cause for his death. He fought for what is right and found forgiveness in his fatal flaw, in which Proctor gradually confesses he committed adultery with Abigail Williams in what it's truly called his redemption. At the end of the play, he is really more worried about his personal morals rather than his public reputation, in which we are able to characterize John Proctor as a tragic hero. He contains all of the elements of a tragic hero, such as hamasha, perpetua, catharsis, and he possesses many noble attributes. The quote that encompasses Proctor and his values start off in Act 2, in Proctor's home, when him and Elizabeth were conversating about the anomaly of Abigail and Proctor's past relationship or affair. Proctor says to Elizabeth, "An everlasting funeral marches round your heart." The metaphor of the funeral marching around her heart shows the concept of relationships and the concepts of redemption. He's basically trying to imply that he redeemed himself, but we have to remember that this trust was still broken in the marriage. It is also ironic because Proctor pushes and forces Elizabeth to move on, but we as the readers know that it's deeply affected her. However, there is also another perspective of the metaphor of the heart, where it links to the world we live in today. We know that the heart governs our emotions. If you don't forgive yourself, how could you expect others to forgive you? And with the motif and symbolism of the devil, we have to choose between right and wrong. The use of dialogue ultimately brings out the plot development. If we look at our contemporary world, every second day we see people spend so much money on extravagant weddings, and 6 months later they're all going to the down. Also, later on in Act 2, when a warrant was sent to Proctor's home for Elizabeth, Proctor, frustrated, Hale says to Proctor, "Proctor, the court is just," in which Proctor replies with, "Pontius Pilate, God will not let you wash your hands of this." The concept of utter hysteria in the town of Salem and the collective experiences of hysteria is shown, and the paradox that there is a blind court system over one piece of evidence that there was a needle in the puppet. There has been an arrest. And there is an also subtle reference to Julius Caesar. Remember how I told you guys that Arthur Miller uses elements of Shakespearean tragedy in The Crucible? The blood in Julius Caesar represents the betrayal by the conspirators and the death of Julius Caesar. The motive of blood in the crucible was right throughout the play. At first, when Abigail and the girls performed witchcraft, the ritual, and in Act 4, when Hale tells Elizabeth, "Beware, Goody Proctor, cleave to no faith when faith brings blood," which ultimately shows the betrayal of the truth by the lies and deceit. Another symbolic way that elements of Shakespearean tragedy are shown in the crucible is through the chain of beings, which ultimately shows that there is chaos in the world and unnatural things happen. For example, the anomaly of witchcraft in Salem by Abigail. This also shows an aspect of Proctor's multifaceted nature of human behavior. His multifaceted nature is also shown through the interactions with Mary Warren. At the end of the play, and at the end of Act 2, Proctor uses a sense of violence as a way to make Mary Warren tell the truth in court. He, grasping her by the throat as though he would strangle her. "Make your peace with it. Now, hell and heaven grapple on our backs." In which Mary replies saying she cannot repeatedly, which brings out the concept of hysteria and fear. Hysteria coming as a collective experience, this metaphor foreshadows what Proctor will do. He'll confess, as we know, and all the evil will slowly come out in Salem. The use of stage directions shows his aggression towards Mary and in a way taking his anger out on her. But Proctor's way of speaking to Mary at home is very different to the way he speaks to her in the court, which shows his character and who he truly is behind closed doors. Proctor's redemption from his transgression is shown at his peak in Act 3, when he confesses to the court his perspective and his adulterous affair with Abigail. He's being overcome. "Excellency, forgive me, forgive me." The repetition and stage directions shows Proctor's emotions, showing that he is weak in this moment. He is ultimately disheartened by what he did to his wife and the trust he lost. At the end of the play, Act 4, he was asked to sign a paper that claimed he did do the witchcraft. He signed it, then ripped it up. He declared that he cannot throw away his pure name because of lies, and even though doing so would save his life, but he doesn't want to be known as a person associated with the devil and have his pure name turn into a bad name, going to the next generation with his child Elizabeth. This is ultimately Proctor's hamasha, that he believes everyone is as truthful as he is and can fix this peacefully. Proctor says, with a cry of his soul, "Because it is my name." The concept of identity is shown, as well as redemption. It truly shows who Proctor is as an individual and that he does display good qualities. The concept of identity is shown, that he doesn't want his name to stain his name with the lies. It is individual experiences because we know that a person's name is a person's identity, and with Proctor, he wants a clean name, even if it means taking away his life. At the analysis of Guy Montag. Guy Montag is the protagonist of the film Fahrenheit 451. He is a fireman in the dystopian society, which restricts books and what they have to offer. His responsibility is to burn books that aren't accepted by the ministry. Transgression and redemption is shown through when Guy Montag begins to read and explores through different literatures, and redemption is shown through when, at the end of the film, when Montag was named horrible things and was slandered, he was being chased by a group of firemen and they turned against each other. Montag redeemed himself at the end by being burned with all the knowledge in the form of books, and meaning he died with that knowledge, just like Proctor. Montag and Proctor are very similar as they share the same transgression and redemption, just in different forms. Montag redeems himself of his transgression by burning alive with the knowledge in the form of books. Proctor redeems himself by dying with the knowledge of the truth that Abigail caused all the hysteria and that he is innocent. This is how Fahrenheit 451 and The Crucible are similar. The main difference between the two is that in The Crucible, the transgression was predominantly in the form of witchcraft, and in Fahrenheit 451, it was more in the form of books and in reading. In the quote, "We can't burn these, I want to look at them, at least one," This shows how dearly Montag aspired to read, and again, knowledge is in a world that it was forbidden to. It relates to the collective human experiences that whenever there is something forbidden, people tend to go against. It is in our nature, which brings out the devil. We have to choose between the right and the wrong. In conclusion, linking back to the statement, storytelling ignites new ideas about the multifaceted nature of human behavior. We can see through the analysis of the three characters through that storytelling does ignite new ideas about, as well as interpretations of how people choose to show their true colors, or they choose to be deceitful and follow the wrong. Through the individual and collective human experiences, we can now examine how text represents human qualities that arise from experiences. We can appreciate and explore the way languages is used to shape representation, the anomalies, paradoxes, and inconsistencies of human behavior and motivations. This is also overall considers this role of storytelling throughout time to express and reflect particular lives. Thank you.